Hi, Ms. Paul. Good to see you, and congratulations on your win.
Thank you. It's always great to be with you, Bashi.
Nice to have you back on the program. I wanted to start off by asking you about something that you mentioned in some of the other interviews I've heard you in, which is that you would be meeting with caucus today and deciding on whether or not to support the throne speech. Has that decision been made?
We're still in discussions. We're going to be meeting one last time today, but we certainly will have a unified position as of tomorrow. We're going to be having a press conference tomorrow to discuss our reaction to the speech from the throne and our decision on whether to support it.
What's your inclination, personally?
Well, I haven't, I have not hidden the fact that I have significant disappointments with the speech from the throne. On the macro scale, I was hoping for something much more visionary and inspiring. We really need that compelling narrative about where we're going to be headed to next once we emerge from this pandemic. And I unfortunately didn't hear that. I was really disappointed not to hear targets on how we were going to targets and a plan on how we were going to tackle the climate emergency. I didn't hear any mention of guaranteed livable income, which I had certainly hoped to hear as well. And as one of the many thousands of Canadians who has lost someone in long-term care during the pandemic, I wanted to hear about a national inquiry. I wanted to hear about plans to fold long-term care into the Canada Health Act, and I wanted to hear he was going to sit down with premiers this week to talk about how they were going to cooperate on getting a proper long-term care system in Canada.
We've already heard, just on your last point, it brought to mind for me, we having covered the issue pretty extensively as well on this program, so many of the premiers have pushed back to a certain degree, and I would especially highlight, for example, Quebec Premier François Legault, and sort of characterized it as an infringement on jurisdiction. It's not an easy. I mean, I take your point. I think many Canadians do on the idea of, for example, long-term care standards, which were in the throne speech, or even more oversight over a national inquiry, which wasn't in the throne speech. But when it comes to money with strings, a lot of premiers reject that. So I take your point, but is it feasible?
I understand that there's pushback, and I hope that they understand that there are lives at stake, that there are people who have died and will continue to die while they are busy talking about jurisdiction. One of the things that people in Canada have made extremely clear throughout this pandemic, and that they've enjoyed and they expect to see more of, is cooperation and collaboration between the different levels of government on their behalf. It's simply not good enough anymore to let people's lives fall apart because it's the jurisdiction of one level and not the other. So I hope that they will put that kind of jurisdiction and partisanship aside and come together to create the really urgent solutions that we need to long-term care in this country.
You use the word collaboration and cooperation, and while you're saying it in reference to different levels of government, I've heard it from a lot of Canadians also in a positive way with respect to different parties sort of during this pandemic, especially at the outset. And we covered the leadership race on Saturday night, and I have to say the number one, it was mostly online, and there was tons of actually interaction with people who were watching, and the number one thing I found people were asking us to sort of delve into was the possibility they hoped, and these were primarily progressive Canadians, they hoped that a party led by you or the Green Party in general would more closely, I guess, work with the NDP or think about a coalition with the NDP. Has any of that crossed your mind? Would you rule that out, or is it something you're open to?
That kind of decision is really up to our members. We are different in many ways, and one of the important ways is that our party is not top down; it's very much grassroots. And so anything that's significant that would require constitutional change is something that our members would have to discuss, create policy around, and then vote on. I would note that in terms of this, there's still quite a lot of hurt out in British Columbia about the American-style campaign tactics that were used in terms of turning off and turning out the vote in BC. That's something that would have to be overcome. And we would also need to feel like the NDP is ready to join us in being at the vanguard of Canadian politics, which, that's an area that we occupy just by ourselves at the moment. And then finally, there is the plan to run a candidate against me in Toronto Centre, despite the fact that we extended leaders courtesy in the last election in the by-election that Jagmeet Singh ran in. That's totally his prerogative, but I wouldn't say that that is the path towards deepened cooperation between us.
So I have a follow-up question for you on your candidacy, but first I just want to circle back because I take your point, and I've heard you say it many times, that the party doesn't operate the same way other parties do. But then, with all due respect, I would ask you, I guess, for your personal view. Is it something, as an individual, as the leader, apart from what, the discussion that might ensue becomes, something that you would be open to if those conditions you talked about were met?
Yes, and I know I take your point that it can seem a little frustrating when I speak in those terms, but it is important for me to be careful because we do have a model that I really believe very strongly in, and there's no question that when a leader says something, it's like putting your hand on the scales a little bit, and this is a very important question that potentially we'll be discussing at our next policy convention. My feeling is that at the moment, the Green Party is a party that is most capable of serving and representing Canadians by doing what we have always done, which is seeking to run very strong candidates in each riding. But again, I'm here to represent our members, and so if they tell me different, then that's something that I would need to represent. But at the moment, that is my feeling.
Okay, let me ask you about your candidacy, because you and the Green Party were hoping that the NDP wouldn't run somebody there because of what happened in the last by-election. The leader's courtesy, though, that you reference usually only applies to seats that were previously held by the new leader's party. So does the NDP really have an obligation there not to run anybody?
They don't have any obligation at all, and they don't owe me anything at all, and I have not requested that courtesy. And as I said in my press conference earlier today, I'm accustomed to having to push down one barrier after another. And if I have to do it yet again here to win a seat and to represent the residents of Toronto Centre who really need that representation, then that's just what I'll have to do.
Okay, I'll leave it there, Ms. Paul. Good luck with your leadership, and I appreciate you making the time for us today.
Thanks, Vashi. Hope to come back again soon.
You bet. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.